The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
This is Malaika Jabali. I am filling in for your usual host, Ben Dixon, who is on vocal rest. He allowed me to take the reins for a brief segment. And in this segment, I am going to be interviewing Councilmember Khalid from the city of South Fulton, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, my hometown. How are you doing, Councilmember?
I am great. It's great to be here representing South Fulton, Atlanta's twin city and the blackest city in America. You and I, two AT aliens, we're seizing the means of productions, as the socialists say. That commandeering this show.
That's right. That is what we say. This is a public forum, so we can do that. Ben has allowed us to do that this evening, and so I'm calling you from Brooklyn, miles away, but also another black city. And so,
I was just saying, y'all are definitely in the diaspora.
Yeah, we out here, the Black American diaspora. And speaking of black folks, you made a comment that shook the table on Black Twitter. He wrote something on Twitter about the political process. So in the midst of this pandemic, we also have to think about politics and what Black voters should be doing in 2020. So I'm going to read this tweet out from the council member, and we're going to talk about this for a little bit and get into some other things with politics. So you said, and I quote, "One reason Bernie's ideas seem so far-fetched to Southern Black voters is because Southern Black Democrats have done little the past 30 years to improve people's lives or communities. Why would folks believe in Bernie when they can barely believe in us? Hashtag local elections matter." Tell me about that.
I've always been outspoken. I call myself not an elected official, but an elected activist. I was a Black Lives Matter organizer here in Atlanta, and I ran for office when the city of South Fulton was created. We were created 3 years ago, so I've been in office for 3 years. But I was born and raised in South Fulton. I represent Old National Highway. We call it Old Nat. It is, it is the blackest part of the blackest city in America. And, it was a very nice upper middle class neighborhood decades ago, like many Black neighborhoods, especially after the housing crash of 2008, where we all ended up upside down in our mortgages, and we've yet to recover, though the rest of America has recovered their housing values. Our housing values are still on their way back. But I've been out here 40 years and we still don't have sidewalks. And the same people that were the people that were our state representatives are now our Congress people. And the people that were our county representatives are now our mayor. So the same people have been in power for 40 years and we don't even have sidewalks. There are a lot of things that we don't have in our community. Like our schools are not the best schools. We don't have any Fortune 500 companies here. We just don't have a lot of the infrastructure and the amenities and the things that other communities where people are advocating for their communities have them. And so there is the people's approach out here to issues in the community, whether it be illegal dumping or crime or economic development, are to call the news or to show up to a council meeting and cut the monkey, right? And it is because I can't blame people for having that sort of adversarial relationship, because for decades they've been asking their elected officials to do things, and we haven't gotten them done. Mm-hmm. And the idea that someone like Bernie could make healthcare free for everyone or make college free for everyone, even though every other developed country in the world has these amenities for their citizens, We haven't even provided sidewalks. So if my council person or my county commissioner hasn't provided sidewalks or clean streets or good schools or economic development, and they presided over decades of like a declining infrastructure and declining business climate, why would we believe that some white man from Vermont is going to do more than our own people have done in office? And I really believe that in order to believe in Bernie Sanders or to believe in socialism, you have to first believe in government. You have to believe that government has the power to change people's lives. And if the government that is closest to you, which is your city, your county governments, which is why I say local elections matter, if the government closest to you has failed you consistently for decades, why would you believe that this government 500 or 1,000 miles away in Washington, D.C. is going to do right by you? Right. And so that's where the tweet came from.
Right. And now what's interesting is this, I guess, maybe a contradiction in the media compared to what we hear on the ground. So I report and I talk to Black communities face to face. I talk to our people face to face. I was actually in Atlanta, and this is when I first, for the listeners here, this is when I first spoke with Councilmember Khalid, because the Democratic National Convention was having the Democratic Party was having their debate in November in Atlanta. And on one hand, we hear so much about Black people being the backbone of the Democratic Party. But then when I talk to local leaders in the South, there's this huge narrative about what Black Southerners think. And you're a Black Southerner, I'm a Black Southerner. But when we talk to some of our friends, when we talk to some of our family, it's like people are saying that what's happening is not enough. Even in a debate that is in Atlanta, people are like, our issues are not being centered. Instead, we are conveniently propped up when it's convenient. But when these day-to-day meat and potatoes issues matter to us, which we can see with the COVID-19 crisis, when we're calling out for help, somehow the help is not there. And so
I don't know if you remember that debate, but we were an hour and a half into that debate. We were well into the second hour of that debate before they even mentioned Black people.
Oh, I absolutely.
We're supposed to be in a Black Mecca, and like they barely brought it up. Nobody brought up reparations because we kicked Auntie Miriam off the stage, who was really the only person that would come out and talk about it. Her and Julian Castro at times.
Right.
So
Miriam wasn't playing.
Right. I want to say this thing, like, I'm not trying to tear down Joe Biden. And it's so crazy, man. Like I've been getting into fights with people questioning Joe Biden and asking Black people and Black Democrats, what is our agenda for Joe Biden? I get that we have to vote for him because it's him or Trump, and not voting for him is a vote for Trump. That's cute. That's cute for Joe Biden's presidency, but what do we get for our vote? What promises is he making? Because I was clear with Bernie what I was getting. I was getting free college, I was getting debt forgiveness, and I was getting free health care. Now, every person I know on Old National that has a debt problem, because I'm going to say not everybody has a debt problem, but all the Black people I know in debt, really all the people in America that I know in debt, their two biggest debts are their student loan debt, which you can't write off, and and medical bill debt. And so I was clear, and I didn't think that Bernie had done enough. And so I want to be clear that I am one of the people that challenged Bernie to have a more specific racial analysis and a specific plan or thoughts around reparations. And I'd asked him that in a public forum. There were several Black folks that were interested in that question, so it wasn't like I just came up with it myself. I'm not going to take that credit, but I say that to say I challenged Bernie on these issues, and so now I'm challenging Joe Biden on these issues. What are you going to do for Black people? How is my life? What measurable difference am I going to see in a Biden presidency? because Trump is worse is not an answer. Like, Trump is worse is not something that I can measure. I need to know how the lives of my family and my people and my community are going to look better in the next 4 years if I give you my vote. And there are a lot of people that fought me about that.
About just asking him the questions, asking Biden?
Just even asking the questions, as if we should just be happy to get rid of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And for the past several decades, income inequality has been getting worse and worse and worse and having more disastrous effects on our community. All of these structural inequalities and COVID-19, right, has now exposed all of these inequalities. There's a saying, I think it was Ron, doesn't matter, but there's a saying that when America gets the cold, Black America gets the flu.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now America has the flu. They have coronavirus. So what are Black people getting?
Right.
I
tweeted about that myself. I said, America is catching the flu and we die from coronavirus.
Right. And so here's what I really want Black people to understand. First of all, we have a right. Every other constituency does not give their vote unless they get something. The LGBT community, women, every group, every constituency says, we want these things. And it's not enough to be like the other guy is worse. So why would we not demand something for our vote? Why would we not extract some specific win for our vote? We have a right to do that. And I want every Black person hearing this podcast to understand that you have the right to question what Joe Biden is going to do for you. And Trump is worse is not a sufficient answer. If it's not a sufficient answer for other constituencies, it should be a sufficient answer for us. This is where our liberation as Black people is connected to everyone's liberation, is connected to the 99%. Because each year, the 1% is extracting more from us and giving us less. Each year they're doing that. And the canary in the coal mine is Black people. Whatever they get away with doing to Black people, they will be doing to you in 20 years.
That's right.
Whatever it is, in the 50s and the 60s, we were locked out of union jobs. And white people were like, oh, well, that's fine. We got our union job. And what are they doing now? They've shipped all of those jobs down to Mexico or over to Asia. And now you all don't have the jobs. We told you 50 years ago this was coming. If you had watched our community, you would have seen this. You would have seen this coming. For the past 20 or so years, they have been Republicans, and I should name the day, like white supremacists and Republicans have been messing around with our vote. Have been kicking us off voter rolls, have been doing all of these sort of voter suppression things. And now Donald Trump is talking about shutting down the post office. And now none of y'all are going to be able to vote, whatever color you are. But you have to understand, it started first with us. So everything that is being done to Black people isn't being done just to Black people. It's a test for the rest of the 99%. And we've got to understand that, and we've got to all be in this together and build coalitions that make demands of whomever is in the White House. And more importantly, we have got to begin building a pipeline of leaders. Because what is happening now, and it was wonderful that Wisconsin Supreme Court, that they got their liberal justice, but that's one court in one state. We know that in the vast majority of states, the courts are becoming more conservative. We know that in the vast majority of the states, the legislatures are becoming more Republican. I think their Republican Party is maybe one or two state legislatures away from being able to amend the Constitution, to ratify the Constitution, because it takes a certain number of state legislatures for that to happen. But this is something they've been putting into place since the 70s. Since the 70s, in their Federalist societies, they've been building pipelines from law schools to magistrate courts. That's a local election. In many states, your Superior Court and magistrate court judges are elected. They built a pipeline from law school to those courts, all the way up to the federal courts and the Supreme Court. They've done the same thing from city councils to county commissions to state legislatures to Congress. I have a Republican district here in Metro Atlanta. The Republican is, I'm not going to remember the district number now because I just brought it up, but the Republican incumbent is retiring. There are 9 Republicans running to replace that guy. And we have 1 Democrat. And I don't even know if they're progressive or not. But that's how serious their bench is. And we have been, and now I'm going to criticize the left, right? Like I'm going to criticize the Bernie-crats. Some of us have been so focused on Bernie, and we've been so focused on maybe congressional seats. But we don't even know who our county commissioner is. Right. We don't know who our state house rep is. And it's the state house reps that write the forced birthing bills that we see going across the country. It's the county commissioners that make the decisions, and the city council people that make the decisions about whether or not we're going to build affordable housing or what qualifies as affordable in your city. Those decisions are made at the local level. It's your police chiefs and your police departments that make the decision to not fire somebody who strangles Eric Gardner or kills Mike Brown. Those are local decisions. That's your local DA. All of those people are on the ballot in Georgia next month.
The federal elections, there's but so much change that we know can happen with that. If you have a Senate and a House where the majority of them are going to be tied to corporate interests, that is just how the game has worked for several decades. If you have a president who doesn't necessarily need to concede anything to Black people, to progressives, to socialists, then the next step is to say, well, how can we find power elsewhere? And so you're talking about the importance of local elections, and you hashtag at the end of your tweet, local elections matter. So in what ways can we be thinking about organizing ourselves to support people like you, to support progressives, to support radicals, to support socialists where we are?
Well, one thing you can do if you live in Georgia, you can visit KhalidCares.com. I will have a slate of candidates there, and there are some calls that we're doing. I'm also the chair of the Atlanta chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. So I will be doing some town halls in the coming weeks with the Democratic Socialists of America and with Our Revolution, where we're going to have slates of local people that are running for office. We're going to explain what the offices are, because we know a lot of people have only been paying attention to the top of the ticket. So we're going to explain what the offices are, what their powers are, what they do, what's at stake. And then we're going to be asking people to get out and get involved with these campaigns. And the magic of this moment right now is that so much campaigning is actually happening online, and so much, and I want to be clear that like tweeting about a candidate is not campaigning. I mean, it's nice, but if your tweet doesn't have a link to fundraise for that candidate, if you're not following your tweet up with phone calls of your neighbors, you're not really doing it, because that's really what it takes to win elections. And we're going to talk about that on the call as well. But we got to get on phone banks and phone trees the same way that we phone banked for Bernie in 2016 or 2020. We got a phone bank for Nabila Islam, who's running for Congress in the 7th, or Michael Owens, who's running against one of the most corrupt Congress people in Congress in Georgia's 13th district. So we've got to get out there and knock virtual doors for candidates with these phone banks. That's what everyone's got to be doing in every state. New York, where you are, they're having their primary June 24th. They have great people like Jabari Brisport, and there's an entire slate that is running for the state assembly in New York. And what I would say is, in just about every city you're in, there's a Democratic Socialist of America chapter. For the neophytes who, have just started listening recently to the Ben Dixon podcast, all the OGs already know this, but Bernie came out of the Democratic Socialists of America, and there are DSA chapters in every major city in this country, and they all are fielding and supporting progressive candidates. So if you don't know anywhere else to go, find the DSA chapter in your city, ask them, like, who are they supporting? Who are you supporting? And how can I get involved?
Yep. And I want to shout out my organization in New York City, which was co-founded by, so for our listeners who might be in the New York area, Assemblymember Charles Barron, who is up for re-election. And we have another young man, Karan Aline, who's running for state senate. And these are Black radical politicians. And when we talk about, people who are socialists, people who are radicals or progressives, people on the left, this isn't just about ideology. We're talking about people who recognize that we need reforms. We need these survival programs. We need to be able to expand, the access to healthcare that we have right now, but also people who understand that is not enough. That ultimately we're going to have free healthcare, single payer healthcare, because as this crisis has shown, being able to have access to something that is expensive is meaningless. Being able to have access to education that's too expensive and that's going to mire you in student loan debt is not enough. So you need people who care about the bigger picture of stepping away from a capitalist system so that we can actually have the programs that we need, because Black people are going to be the ones who suffer the most when it fails, and it consistently falls on our backs. So Operation Power, we have been running candidates to be involved in community organizing on the community boards. A number of our members are on the community boards, and that's where it starts. It starts, locally, talking to our neighbors, getting on the phone, like you said, council member. So these are kinds of conversations that we tend to have, at the Thanksgiving table, when we tend to not want to critique Black people, Black Democrats, Black politicians. When Obama was in office, it was a challenge for us to say anything that can be perceived as negative. But I've been noticing a shift, particularly among millennials, younger Black voters, to be able to call that out right now. And so why do you think that's important? Because that's something that you did. That's something that you have continuously done. Why do you think that is valuable?
It's necessary. Talking about the COVID-19 crisis, as a Black gay man in Atlanta, I have a blood memory of the HIV/AIDS crisis and the way that it devastated the Black gay community, even in a city that is home to the Centers for Disease Control, still has the highest rates of new infections. How could we be so close to so many resources that don't make it to our community. It's the same way that we can live in the richest country in the world and have the highest COVID-19 infection rate, because those resources don't belong to America. They belong to America's 1%. They're not your resources. And we've got to call that out because our lives depend on it. And so I learned through that movement that my silence made me complicit in a genocide. And I won't do that, right? Like I won't let a Biden administration piss on us and tell me that it's raining because it's not Donald Trump's piss. Like, I won't do that. And I'm not going to apologize about who I am and what I want for my life and what I want for the people that I love and what I want for my community. You know, I have been mulling over running for mayor of South Fulton. Our mayoral election is next year. And one of the things that I've been talking about is that South Fulton is the blackest city in America. Of cities over 100,000 people, we are 89.7%. We are 90% black. And we should stop. And and people get upset when I say that. There are black people who get upset when I say that. I'm not going to apologize for being black. And I'm not going to apologize for wanting to prioritize black people in a city that's in a country that has disenfranchised black people for 400 years. We can't have a city? You know, and so what do we get from COVID-19? Like what resources are we getting? Here in Atlanta, we have like 2 free testing sites for COVID-19. Not one of them is south of I-20. How does that work? How do we for
the uninitiated, I-20 is the highway that goes across kind of the middle of the metro area. So it
is the dividing line between North Atlanta and South Atlanta. And so in South Atlanta, there are no free there's no free testing center.
It's more black people south of I-20.
Right. It would be the equivalent if you were, it's the south side of any city. Right. You know, it's the south side of a couple cities, black folks on the north side. But it's the side of the city with all the black people on, and we don't have any free tests. And why is that acceptable? Why? We are now seeing data that black people are being disproportionately impacted, that we are dying in disproportionate numbers from this disease. To me, that demands that we get a disproportionate amount of resources. Like that shouldn't even be a controversial subject. If in New Orleans, 70% of the people who are dying from COVID-19 are black and brown folks, then black and brown folks should get 70% of the federal aid that comes. And like that, but to say that's alarming to people. Why would that be alarming?
Right. On the left and the right. Let's keep that clear too.
And so, we got to, I think that unfortunately inequality has gotten so bad that young people are just not willing to accept it. And social media, I think social media has done for millennials and Generation Z the same thing that television did for the civil rights generation. We knew that we were being treated unfairly, but the magic of TV let us see exactly how much we were being denied. And I think beginning with the Black Lives Matter movement, and social media, I've used this analogy before. Back in the day when people would be lynched, they would leave the bodies hanging in trees or on lampposts or at railroad crossings. They would leave the bodies out for days so that everybody in the county could see it, right? Everybody in the area would go by or cross that path and they would see it. And they lynched people for taking down people who were hanging on trees. They'd put you up on a tree for trying to take somebody down because they wanted everyone to see it. They wanted it to be a sign. I think what we saw in the Black Lives Matter movement is that social media became the tree. And so the lynchings of people like Mike Brown or Philando Castile that we would have maybe only heard about in an anecdote, we saw play over and over on our screens in these phones that we hold in our hands all day. And I think that it ignited the same kind of rage that Emmett Till's body and Jet ignited, right? And pictures of dogs and water hoses being aimed at children enraged and started freedom rides. So this generation has just been exposed to the details of this widening inequality in such an intimate way. And we can communicate and we can talk about it and we can create our own spaces like Black Twitter where we can organize about it. And we're just not going to wait for some old politician to die in office, right, before they pass the baton. We're not going to wait to take your baton from your coffin. We're going to take your baton while you're sitting in your seat.
Well, that is that on that. Councilmember Khalid, how can people find out more about you?
Just visit KhalidCares.com. I'm Khalid Cares, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat,
You
TikTok,
snap
everywhere. Everywhere. I snap every now and again. I'm getting more into TikTok right now, but I'm everywhere. Khalid Cares.
Snapchat was where I was like, that's it. I can't cross over into Snapchat, but with this quarantine, this social distancing, I had to dip my toe into TikTok. I won't make a video, but I'll watch it. So I'll look for you on there. I'm an old millennial. We don't understand them things.
I got you. Yeah, Snap. I don't even know people. Do people even Snapchat anymore?
I don't even know. I feel like they left now, like folks, how we left Facebook. They deserted.
But TikTok is popping. Like
it is popping.
You gotta check it. Yeah, TikTok is popping.
No, I watch it. I lurk. So how do you spell your name, just so that people know? Exactly.
Khalid as in Delta. Khalid, the traditional Arabic spelling. I guess there's probably a couple, but that's how I spell it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being a guest while I'm a guest. Hopefully, Ben will have maybe both of us back on at some point.
Absolutely, Ben. We're going to do a roundtable. I know you're listening. You're going to have us back you're going to have a Southern roundtable.
Oh, that's right.
That's a bet.
Southerners and those who have migrated, because I'd love to be on that.
Absolutely.
All right, Councilman. Have a good night.
All right. South Fulton forever.
Take care.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.